Since I'm gonna review something today that I haven't really reviewed in a long time and haven't reviewed in general often before, I can tell you one thing, I don't really have much long-term experience, and what I'm talking about is Wear OS. So today I'm gonna review an Android smartwatch wearable, and the question I have for you is actually, do you use wearables in general? Do you like the idea of it? Do you have one, and what do you actually use it for? Because I have to say, especially Wear OS is mainly the issue of this thing, if there is an issue. But whoever likes wearables, who likes Wear OS, this is definitely a nice one. But the general purpose of Wear OS is something that I'm still debating on if it's any useful. Now let's get into the hardware real quick here. This is the TicWatch E2. It also comes along with a dock with an 80 centimeter long cable that ends with type A. Now what I have to say is that even though it has a little bit of rubber at the bottom which will prevent it from sliding on a proper surface, I would maybe wish for some suction cup or something that makes it just a little bit heavier, because if I have it something like around, it just moves too easy and it fell down off my desk way too often. Obviously you could just use double-sided stick tape, but otherwise it works, as you can see, and this is how it looks, by the way, attached. So that mechanism is fine. Now about the watch, it comes with a silicone band. I actually think it's quite nice and soft. It's not too thick. It obviously can be replaced. And then we have the watch itself, as you can see here in terms of thickness. It's pretty much all over matte plastic. It feels solid, that's for sure. I can't really judge the thickness because the last time I've used a proper watch, I actually can't remember how big those were. And for people who usually use bigger timepieces anyways, I don't think this is an issue. What we have is a mic and a button. What we don't have is though actually quite a lot, because as far as I can see, there is no sensor for the brightness. And please don't bother about the fact that this is all in German, but it's a little bit harder to switch it. So if we, for example, go to display, we can change the watch face, but also the brightness. And you can see we have 5 different steps. That's it. So no auto brightness control, which is a little bit of a pain in the ass, because usually I use like brightness free, I think, indoors, but once I'm outdoors, that's not bright at all. So I have to change that, and there is no auto option. We can obviously change the brightness. We can have the always on display and also lock the touchscreen. For example, the watch faces, you can either change them like that, just take one and then use one, or if you just use Wear OS, the app, for example, you go into this and then you have your choice. You can obviously load a lot more from the store and I guess from other sources, but once you actually set up the phone, which is super easy because you just pair it with your phone and then it pretty much tells you to install Android Wear or Wear OS, and then this is pretty much done, and you don't really need the software then anymore, which is quite handy. But quite handy is the thing that I have to still decide on if Wear OS is dead. Because let's actually see, and I'm not gonna go too much into Wear OS because I guess you know that by now. Here you can see your Google feed with all your informations and so on. If we swipe to the right, we have our steps. Since I just woke up, there isn't happened much. Then we can see the normal face. We can also swipe like this. There you can see your notifications, like this, for example. You can swipe them away to the side. And if we swipe downwards, you can see the quick settings. For example, you can turn on the battery saving mode. Then I don't actually know what this is since I never used it. This is something that I would like to change. You can also then, for example, turn it off so it doesn't turn on anymore, maybe at night. That's something quite useful. Then we have Do Not Disturb, airplane mode that I didn't want to actually activate. And then the settings. Let's actually quickly go through that so you see what's going on. You can see this is display. Then we have apps and notifications, movement, so you can choose if it turns on, if you move your wrist or not. I actually didn't want that because I move my hand, I guess, too much, and therefore it turns off way too often. So I just let it do whatever it does. You can also do this. If you, for example, put your hand on, then it, like, let's see, then it goes into, yeah, it doesn't do that anymore. Okay, here you can see I touched it a little bit too early. And then connectivity and some extra options. And obviously if we press the button now, here we have kind of like all the apps that are installed. You can install more from the Play Store. And then it just comes down to functionality, because I mean, it's cool to have a clock watch. You can search your phone. There is tick, like health, tick, pulse, where you can, obviously it has a reader. I could for example, just press this button, and then it will, as you can see here, flash and measure my heart rate. I don't know really how precise it is, but it seems quite good because that's what I usually expect my heart rate to be. But what is actually odd that the display turns off before you actually see the thing. So I would have wished for an option, maybe there is one, to actually accentuate the time before it actually goes on, and I definitely don't have 102, but I didn't really properly use it, so that is fine. But I mean, you can also use the translate functionality and so on. But what is also is missing a speaker, because if you, for example, press the button or say, okay, I'm not gonna say that, and so the trigger word, then you could ask it questions, but you don't really get an answer with voice. You will always get it with text. So you can't make any voice calls with that. There is no auto brightness functionality. So it gives you the basic functionality, which is fine. Changing the watch faces, for example, if you want to see a different one, we can quickly actually do that. It's not a long time. Now, performance-wise, I would have to say that this does a solid job, because it feels actually smoother than, but okay, time has passed by now, you can see that, and if it turns off, we will just wait. Performance was fine. Sometimes it definitely slows down a little, but in general, normal apps, as you can see here, it worked absolutely fine. Battery life, well, that's maybe a thing that I would definitely maybe go for something else, but not, I mean, Android Wear OS in general, because with very light use, I would get like 2 days out of it. And I actually think that people who would use it heavier would maybe need to charge it every day, but I don't really see a reason to use this heavily, because when I used it quite heavily on my first day when I was trying out apps and so on, I could have drained it all the way in about a day. But I don't think there is much more battery use out of it, like maybe 2 days, because yes, for example, whenever I used it, it got me like 2 days, and I don't think I used this too much. So what I did is sometimes see a notification, maybe an email or a WhatsApp message, but not really much more besides that. So that's why I have a little bit of a harder time, and I guess you actually want to maybe see it on my wrist. So this is what it looks like. So this, in terms of size, we can actually go a little bit closer so you can see that. I can't really judge the size. For me, someone who actually doesn't really wear wearables anymore, I think this is fine, because it didn't feel heavy, it didn't feel too thick, it felt totally fine for me. But the functionality, like I said, I don't really do much more than some WhatsApp messages, and you can dictate them, obviously, you can use the keyboard, which is not that easy, and you get your notifications, you get your kind of Google feed, but other than that, I don't really see much more use out of Wear OS, because I guess for me, the way I see it, not knowing much about wearables, I would see there are like two main categories of these wearables, what usually people do use them for. One would be something like something like a Xiaomi Mi Band that pretty much tracks your footsteps, gives you the calories, also heart rate monitor, and maybe some other functionalities, and then gives you notifications plus the watch. That is basic functionality, and those are usually noticeably smaller. And for example, with the Mi Band, those hold up for like almost a month at a time, at least 2 or 3 weeks, where you have to charge this like every 1 or 2 days, maybe 3 at best. And then there are other people who want a little bit more functionality out of their wearables, and I guess those, if they don't use an Apple Watch, but since this is Android, we are talking about something else, then they usually switch to Tizen, because the Galaxy watches, they usually have more functionality out of it. You can make voice calls. You get just a better experience from what I've never used it, but a colleague of mine uses it, and he wasn't really a wearable or tech-savvy guy anyways, but he likes the functionality get out of it. What I just don't see personally is what I would use this for in daily life, because at first I like the idea that notifications come in and I don't have to check my phone, but if I really want to interact a little bit more on it, and I don't really like to use voice dictation anymore, because it just doesn't work that well for me, because I never really know what I want to say up front, so I just type it. It's just something that I'm more used to it. So whenever I want to do something proper, then I have to go to the phone anyways, and you can't do that much with this phone. This is a basic functionality thing, and therefore I think that is the reason why most people just skip to something like a thin fitness tracker that gives you notifications information, because I just want to see, okay, I got a mail, I got a WhatsApp message, and if I can read like 1 or 2 lines, that is already good enough for me. But if I just generally see this as what it is, a Wear OS, and I guess you have to know for yourself if this is something good, because I'm not really reviewing Wear OS here, but this watch for 160, I think the hardware is good. I can't really judge it, because the display feels sharp enough, but I guess it's a standard resolution. The performance is standard. We have the always on functionality, and the build quality seems fine. It charges okay. Battery life, I guess, is also pretty typical. So it's a nice watch. I can't really judge the value or anything else since I just don't have the experience. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I kind of like it. But I don't think this is something, says someone who hasn't used a watch general for like 10 years and before that a long time. But just due to phones, I just don't see the necessity anymore. And for me, it's actually almost more convenient these days just to grab a phone if I want to get something done instead of fiddling around with my hand on the watch face. So that would have been it. If you want to buy one, you can use the link down there. Otherwise, let me know in the comments what you think, because just yesterday when I mentioned it in a live stream, people didn't seem so fond of wearables in general, which I kind of guess we just haven't found a proper solution for that, because whoever I see talking about wearables, the only people that are either talking about Tizen or the Apple Watch, which seems to be the non plus ultra after all at the moment, but doesn't work for Android. Okay, so that's it.